Hey, everybody, my fellow Europa League winners. Welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. This is going to be your predicted lineup, the last predicted lineup of the season. So, thank you guys so much for supporting this channel. Thank you guys for helping me out with these predicted lineups when I've had to step in. This is the final time of the season that I will have to do so. And once again, I'm going to say this might be one of the hardest ones I've ever had to do with these predicted lineups. So, please get into the comments. Let me know who you think might be starting for this game. I imagine there are a few hangovers. There's just kind of a lack of sort of intensity probably going to be shown from the players for this game. It's just going to be a feel good factor. It's just going to be good vibes. It's going to be a bit of a trophy parade. Hard to say, which guys Ange Postecoglou is going to pick. You also want to try to avoid any injuries towards the end of the season. There might be a few guys that he wants to give some sort of celebratory type of nods to just for the sake of it so that people can clap them up, give them their appreciation that is very due and very deserved. So it's a tough one. I'm going to have to really dig into maybe more the sentimental reasons and also, I guess, a bit of the fitness reasons for some of these predictions here for the various positions. So please, everybody, help me out here. I'm also going to go for, again, maybe a slight formation shape change. So it's going to be very different than what you might normally expect, I imagine, for tomorrow's starting 11. Please, everybody, smash that like button. And once again, thank you guys so much for supporting this channel over the course of this up and down absolute roller coaster season, but it was all worth it at the end. I'm in my happy clapper mode, engaged for the rest of the season. And of course, basically what I really meant to say, but all the way through pretty much next year. So thank you guys. And it feels just so good to constantly be saying Europa League winners. I'm just so happy to be reminded of it over and over and over again. Social media team with Spurs have done an excellent job on my various social media feeds of reminding me that over and over again. And I just look forward to reliving it back and just seeing just the relaxed, very just sort of positive, as well as just sort of, again, kind of lack of tension, lack of real frustration, and, having to sort of have that monkey on our back in terms of the trophy. I feel like a metaphorical weight has been lifted off my off of my shoulders. I've lost a lot of weight over the past year, but now I feel like I've lost even more now that Spurs have won that trophy. But let's get into it. Enough blabbering for me as per usual. We're going to start off with goalkeeper. It's a tough call between Kinski and Romero. I felt like Vicario did look like he was amongst part of the party crew for the celebrations, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ange Postecoglou maybe gives Vicario something like 45 to 60 minutes and then maybe brings him off for someone like a Kinski just so he can have his moment of love, have his moment of appreciation, kind of more of a celebratory type of inclusion. Because we know with goalkeepers, they don't have to run around, they don't have to muck about as much as some of the rest of the players. So I wonder if there will be a bit of a split job here where it might start with Vicario, then look to bring Kinski on, but give an opportunity for us to give our love and our appreciation for Vicario. Still think he has a lot of stuff to work on when it comes to his ability to stop set pieces, coming out and claiming the ball, catching the ball, first of all, in that department. Also, when he's playing out from the back, he really seems to, be very, very tied down to trying to, play out from the back, even when there's really nothing on. But I do feel like, a lot of us have forgotten just how good this guy is at shot stopping, even towards the end of that game, right? Some of the saves that he was pulling off there. I think this guy really is a world class shot stopper, especially in one on ones. He's just absolutely absurd, but he does have plenty of other things to work on. And I think it's been of a pretty good season for Vicario. He's definitely had some sloppy moments, but for the most part, I think he's also kept us in plenty of games despite us losing a lot of games this season. It actually could have been, in my opinion, a lot worse had it not been for Vicario on plenty of these. I do love his shot stopping. I think it's top drawer. And I think he deserves, plenty of plaudits for this year. But like I said, still has plenty to work on. And my reasoning is he's going to get some plaudits, when he comes off as a sub for the likes of Kinski. But let's go to right back. Once again, something kind of similar here, but maybe more to do with also just, I think, a lack of options and also kind of having to do with where will Archie Gray actually play for this game. Pedro Porro alluded to in one of the interviews on the party bus parade that he was preparing to get ready for this Sunday game. So I'm going to take that a bit seriously here. Even though he has played over 4,000 minutes, he hasn't had any injuries of any kind this year. Pedro Porro has put in an absolute shift for us, but he seemed to allude to the fact that he still was getting ready for that final game. So I'm going to say that, maybe he is going to get some minutes for this one. And then maybe Archie Gray might move over to his position later on and let Pedro go instead of playing the full 90 minutes. I thought he did a very good job marshaling Mason Mount, kept him really quiet. And then even when Garnacho came on, I actually didn't think there was that many nervy moments apart from that one little opening Garnacho fastened for himself to get a shot on goal, which Vicario made a very good save for. I'd say actually for that Europa League final, my personal opinion, I think Destiny Udogie had a much harder time dealing with Amad Diallo than the likes of Pedro Porro did with Mason Mount. So that's just my opinion on it. I think Destiny Udogie actually played okay in the Europa League final. I thought he sometimes was giving Diallo a little bit too much space and too much respect. I understand he's a very tricky, very technical player, but there are times when he just needs to come out, towards the ball a lot sooner instead of just letting Diallo just dribble all the way into our box unchallenged. But that's just me. And I think Pedro Porro put in a brilliant defensive shift in that final. And that's something we haven't said too many times with him. He's had games where he's gotten absolutely targeted. There was a period there where he did get targeted for a while. And I think he's now recovered and he's starting to look like his best self again defensively. But for the last game of the season, I think he will be given that start, and then kind of similar to Vicario, could be subbed off at some point for some player. I'm not sure who, but then Archie Gray might move in and finish out the game at right back. I'm going to go for Jed Spence at left back. That's just because there's been good competition between him and Destiny Udogie. They both have contributed a lot to this season. I think Destiny Udogie deserves maybe at some point, maybe a celebratory type of send off or inclusion. It could maybe start with Jed Spence, then maybe Destiny Udogie comes on to start the game. It's hard here. Like I could see Ange maybe starting with Udogie, then bringing on Jet Spence very quickly into the second half. I'm not too sure. This is again a very, very tough predicted lineup to be doing. But I think they both have had fairly good seasons. Jet Spence, at one point looked like an absolute nailed on for all the starting 11s. And then you would say with the likes of Destiny Udogie that there was periods where he wasn't looking too hot, but then also towards the end of the season, he really was looking very solid defensively. So I think they're definitely both worth keeping for the long run and really do have bright, bright futures ahead of them and have offered really good competition for each other. So I would say plaudits to both of them, and they both deserve minutes, in my opinion, in this game. But Destiny Udogie, maybe you never know. It might have been part of the party crew and doesn't necessarily want to play any of the minutes in the Brighton game. Again, very, very hard to judge, who's actually going to be starting for this game. For left-sided center back, I have gone for Ben Davis. Mickey looked like he was one of the ones that was really enjoying himself during the plenty of the celebrations. I saw a Heineken in his hand almost at all times during these celebrations. Looks like a guy that enjoys to have a beer or two, which I absolutely love. And we know how those hamstrings are. They're precious. They're worth almost 40 million pounds on their own, those hamstrings. And as for Ben Davis, it could very well be his last game in a Spurs shirt. I think there was rumors. I'm not too sure. I could be wrong on this, but I think there was rumors that Spurs are going to extend his contract for the 2025-26 season, but I haven't seen anything that recent in regards to that. I could be again wrong. Maybe they have already done it, but last time I saw any bit of news on that was kind of around the winter period, and I think it's been a bit quiet since then. And then I feel like, it could be a good time for Ben Davis to part ways with Spurs. I think he's put in some great performances this season, especially towards the middle and sort of beginning of the season. He definitely stepped up and actually was looking like sometimes one of our better center backs. But towards the end of the season, I think he started to show flashes of kind of the old Ben Davis, especially one that doesn't look like he's too comfortable playing with such a high line, trying to play that offside trap and things like that. So I feel like, end the season on a high, end the season with a good season. Don't, make us, I don't know, have to criticize or have to, put him under, in the next season. If he ended on a high, I would say fair play to Ben Davies. I would shake his hand. Whereas if we kept him around for another season, personally, I just think he's also blocking the pathway for people like Vuskovic. You also have Alfie Dorrington coming through, Ashley Phillips, Radu Dragishin is still around, Kevin Danzo is still around. I just don't. And we technically have Archie Gray who can play in one of the center back positions as well. I just think there's such a plethora of players to pick from there. I don't see much of a reason really to, keep Ben Davies that much longer, but that's just me. Let's go into the center mid positions now. When it comes to the center mid positions, oh, sorry, I already gave something away there. A little bit sloppy for myself. Right-sided center back. Get through this quickly. Danzo or Romero. I could see a bit of a split situation here. Danzo came on and did wonderfully to deal with Harry Maguire and cleared away some crosses that were into our box in a very brave manner. So credit to Danzo. I also got a bit of a chubby just seeing the likes of Ange Postecoglou bringing on the extra center back in the final 10, 11-ish minutes there. It's just something that I get a real sort of soft spot for. I love always seeing an extra center back coming on to see out the game. You wonder if Romero, though, will get some minutes just to get some respect back from the fans, get the deserved plaudits, get the deserved love that I think, in my opinion, that he absolutely needs. I think he was put under a lot of criticism this season, in some sense, rightfully so. But I personally think that Romero is an absolute world class center back on his day. And yes, has had maybe some mixed games this season, but over the course of his time here, I think has always looked like the best center back in a Spurs shirt. But that's just me. I think there's always the people who rate Mickey Van de Ven higher than Romero, and then there are those who, like myself, really do rate Romero and feel like he's definitely given a hard rap. He said he wanted to win this Europa League for this club. He absolutely delivered on that. He was given the man of the match. Personally, I actually would have given the man of the match to one of the midfielders in that game, but that's just me personally. I thought he was brilliant on the evening still, though. Was very no nonsense. Great passing out from the back, dealt with so many different danger moments in the game and showed why he's an absolute winner. But it could be the case that we'll get a mixture of Danzo or Romero for this game. Maybe Romero comes on later in the game as a substitution just to get the plaudits, get the love. Maybe he doesn't play at all because he looked like he was part of the celebratory crew and the party crew for our win over in the Europa League. So I'm not too sure on this one. Again, this one is a very, very tough one to pick. And then also this other one has been a tough one to pick, the midfield, because they looked absolutely shattered, and they should be after the shift they put in the Europa League final. Thought Sarr, this guy, what a shift he put in. The amount of ground that this guy can cover in the midfield, the engine that he has just to close everything down, win every ball, played a huge part in the goal that we scored as well. I think we, had one or two turnovers there, but then we just gave it back to United, very quickly. And then he intercepted it, for something like a third time there in the midfield, and then just was able to drag us up the pitch, was not, at all panicking, when there was kind of a lack of options, gave it to Bentancur, or gave it to Richarlison, who then gave it to Bentancur, and then Pop Matasar, when Bentancur didn't have many options, did a very good job showing for it, and then whipped in a mean, mean cross for Brennan Johnson that wasn't very well dealt with by Manchester United. He's only 22 years of age, and for some reason, he's been put under a lot of scrutiny. Don't get me wrong, he's had some very anonymous performances, I would say, Pop Matasar this year. But at the same time, I think he offers that real workhorse like energy, that guy that can just muck about, be all over the pitch, put in some strong tackles, put in a real shift for the team. I think he's a very unselfish player, Pop Matasar, and he has a good shot from distance as well to test goalkeepers. He has other things to work on for sure, but I think he's a guy you absolutely have to keep around for the long run. Again, only 22 years of age, and we seem to, I don't know, put him under more scrutiny than we've had the likes of Harry Winks's or Oliver Skip, but maybe I'm just being petty at this point. But let me know, everybody, your thoughts on Sarr. I thought he was absolutely immense in that final and showed why we should be keeping a guy like him, especially just for that work rate alone. I've gone for a similar shape to what we saw against Aston Villa, mostly because I wonder if that midfield is just shattered after that game um, in the Europa League final. Bentancur, Basuma, they put in wonderful, wonderful shifts in this Europa League campaign, especially towards the end in Basuma's case in the semifinal. But I think Bentancur's just been immense throughout the Europa League, this season. And so I wonder if they're just both just going to be given a rest. They're going to be allowed to just sort of kick their feet up and watch, as everything goes on. Maybe they'll come on at some point just to get a bit of love and a bit of appreciation. But it seems like a game to start Archie Gray. But my one worry is that Archie Gray, in my opinion, and these recent cameos that he's been able to have in the midfield to give others rest, I don't think he's really looked that great, to be honest. I think he's looked pretty lost actually in the midfield. So I wonder if Ange Postecoglou is considering risking playing him in a two-man midfield. He looked lost in a three-man midfield. How is he going to look in a two-man midfield? But we'll see. And with the lack of depth, though, it's not an easy choice for the likes of Ange Postecoglou. So I could see him just, whatever. There's no consequences to this game. Just go with Sarr, go with Gray, very young midfielders, the ones for the future, and then give the more experienced ones like Bentancur and Basuma that bit of rest. Once again, very, very tough call here. Very, very tough pick. But and also in terms of the shape, right, with just the lack of midfield options, no Kulusevski again, no James Madison, no Lucas Bergfall. There's just so many players missing in that midfield, and some of these guys are probably running on absolute fumes at this point. So it's so hard to predict for this lineup. Let's go over to the wingers. I've gone for Mikey Moore on the right. We saw him play on the right against the likes of Aston Villa. I think he definitely needs minutes, and this is a great game to give him those minutes. I'm pretty sure out of all the ones I've struggled with, this one seems like the easiest one to do here. I think Mikey Moore will be starting this game. Maybe it's on the left. Maybe it will be a 4-3-3. I'm not too sure, but I imagine he will start this game. I thought he kind of struggled against Aston Villa on the right. He looked pretty anonymous for the most part. That's part of being a young player, and I think he's only still growing into his body, only still growing in maturity. He seems to sometimes maybe lack a bit of that pace or a bit of that agility at times, but he's still a very, very tricky player. We're going to see a lot of development from Mikey Moore, and I think he deserves some minutes in this game, and we'll see how he ends up playing. And this is also where I think Spurs have the most depth at the end of the day when it comes to young players and when it comes to just players in general. We have a lot more depth up front than we do in the midfield. So I wonder if Ange Postecoglou will go back towards that 4-4-2, 4-2-4 midfield. Let's go over to the other wing. I've gone for Son. I understand he's probably shattered. I understand he's probably been also a part of the big party crew for that Europa League final celebration. But I think there might be more of a sentimentality type of pick here. Final game of the season, give Sonny some minutes, probably then sub him off for somebody else at some point in the game. But again, there's so much depth up front. That I would imagine he would play like 45 to 60 minutes, and then he probably will be given a huge applause and celebration. Maybe for someone like an Ajayi, a youngster to come on, you could just see that, right? The dynamic there of starting with the experienced legend that is now Sun Heung-min, and then bring on somebody for the future like an Ajayi. But you never know. Again, I could get this one wrong. I thought Sonny, deserves, now the legendary title. He's stuck around longer than Harry Kane did, stuck around longer than Gareth Bale did. Those are my two other favorite ever players at Tottenham Hotspur. He's been around, during the days of Dele Alli, Musa Dembele. The guy's just been around for so long, and somehow did not win any trophies with those brilliant players and those brilliant teams of the past, and stuck around, through thick and thin with this club. And he deserves it. He deserves that legendary status. And the fact that he has won the most significant trophy in my lifetime as a Spurs fan without the likes of Harry Kane, his longtime partner, the best Premier League duo, in my opinion, of my lifetime. Certified legend stuff for me, Sonny. And I think we'll now go down into the great hall or the halls of greats of Spurs players. Let's go to up front, do both of them at once. You can see where I'm going with something kind of similar to the Aston Villa lineup that we saw. I've gone for Odegaard and Tell. I'd imagine that Richarlison and Solanke have absolutely shattered. These guys have run their nuts off in these games in the semifinal as well as also in the final. They put in such a huge shift for this team. And we know Richarlison as well is a bit injury prone. Solanke, I think, deserves rest. If he wants to play some minutes in this game, he's certainly welcome to. But I wonder if these guys are also kind of a bit like Bentancur, Basuma, just can kick their feet up, have a nice little day out, enjoy the sun, drink some water, drink some soda, rehydrate maybe after some of the celebrations on the touchline, and they get to see some of these younger guys for the future be given some minutes. Personally, I would take the option to buy Tell if it were for less than 30 million. I don't think he's shown us enough to be worth more than 30 million at the end of the day, but I like the dynamic between him and Odegaard. I think these guys, have shown that they have a bit of chemistry with each other. Of course, that comes from the French under 21 national team. And he's looked bright on the wing, but I don't think he's looked that great up top for the most part. And I'd say as well, when he has had goal scoring opportunities, he hasn't been that clinical. So that's something I would say he needs to work on for the next seasons of the future. But with Odegaard, I think these two again, have looked good together. I think Odegaard has had some really good games and then has also had some pretty anonymous games. He's shown the signs of also being a young player where he's definitely blown a bit hot and cold. But I really like Odegaard just because it reminds me of kind of the wingers of the past, guys that just always are running at their man, taking them on one, causing problems with shifting in, shifting out, going down the touch line, going down the byline or taking it inside. He's a very two-footed player as well when he's dribbling, not as much when it comes to scoring. Again, he's a bit like Tell, where you need to see a bit more of a clinical edge from him. But I like the fact that he runs at his players, with both feet and can either cross it with the right or cross it with the left. Really like Odegaard and would love to see these two get some minutes in this game. But there it is, everybody. Predicted lineup, a very hard one to do. I imagine I'm probably going to get like 2 out of the 11 right for this one. I'd be shocked if I got more than half of this predicted lineup right. So let me know what you think we'll be seeing tomorrow for the final Premier League game of the season. Thank you guys so much for supporting this channel for Dave and I. You absolutely rock. You make all these watch alongs, pre-match build-ups, all the game day stuff, all the midweek stuff. So fun. And it's been a definitely a tough, tough season, but it's all been worth it at the end. So appreciate you all. Love you all. And smash the like button, please, on your way out. But I will be seeing you tomorrow for the watch along and the final pre-match build-up of our season. See you soon, everybody. Come on, you Spurs. Europa League winners, baby.